Welcome to your Keys to College podcast. We are so excited to have you here today, and we have a great conversation all about standardized test scores and tips for you as parents to help your students get through the stress that they may be feeling about this. So I'm Jen.
I'm Gina, and we have a special guest here who knows a whole lot about standardized testing and its relationship to financial aid and admissions and parenting. So, Lauren, can you please introduce yourself?
Hello, I am Lauren Gaggioli. I am the founder of Higher Scores Test Prep, and I recently sold that company. I moved into supporting entrepreneurs and also helping people name their passion with my course Big Y Life that's debuting on May 1st. So I'm really excited to be supporting people in that vein because, as I'm sure will come up throughout this conversation, one of the biggest stumbling blocks that I found with testing was kids not understanding their big why and not being able to name their why. And, it's hard to be motivated to study for a test when there's no clear why on the other side of it. So I'm really excited to share my tips and tricks for parents to help them make this a more calm and fulfilling journey.
Yes, yes, thank you. Because it is often, not calm, right?
Yes.
It's yeah. So tell us, like, let's start with. It is not the easiest question, but it's the question that I think gets asked a lot, right? It's like, how do I choose whether I should do the SAT or the ACT, and what's the difference?
Well, any answer I give you right now might change in the near future
Right.
with the digital tests that are coming out.
Hmm.
It really comes down to understanding the tests and understanding your kid. I think there is a perception that the SAT is easier. That's what I hear quite often, and I take the other tack. So I actually, if I'm just asked default what a student should take, I say the ACT. I think the ACT, with its distribution of test scores across 4 domains, so you have English first, then math, then reading, then science. None of those is going to stand out tremendously if you don't do as well, right? You have four, and then your score is averaged. With the SAT, two whole sections are math. Half of your score is math. So if you're not a strong math student, then you're probably going to struggle. Now, if you are a good math student, you have another problem with the SAT, which is that it is very verbal. A lot of word problems, a lot of taking word problems and translating them into equations. And so students who are not as strong with the verbal side, who say, "Oh, I'm a math student," that half their score is still predicated on them reading. So the SAT is a reading test all the way through. I love that. I'm an English gal, but that can pose problems and stumbling blocks for students. Also, the reading, I would say, on the SAT is more akin to an AP test than it is just what we were used to in the past before the 2016 change. So that's why my default answer is ACT, but there are students for whom the SAT is the better fit. So always, always do your own exploration. You can get free ACTs and SATs online. Have a student, you don't even have to take the full thing. Have a student go through, do a couple of sample questions from each section and assess. What I would never do are those hybrid tests that some of the larger test prep companies put out that are like, take this test and then we'll tell you which one you're better at,
Oh, yeah.
because they hide which test the questions are from. And I think that doesn't serve our students to become informed users of the exams. And we want them to have buy-in. And literally, this is one of the only choices you have. Like, it really is free and clear. Take the test that fits you best. So when students can have a choice and have a hand in this and not just be like, yes, you need to test, would be my angle. You should probably test, I should say. But as you do, we want students to have as much buy-in as possible. Getting to choose which test to take is absolutely one way we can help up that ante. So I would encourage students to be a part of the process. with no blinders on.
Yeah, I love that, giving the students agency and helping them
Yes.
figure out which one suits them, so they will go in with more confidence, right? Because they're like, oh, I feel this one. Basically,
Yes.
it's the right one for me.
Yes.
For me, to make that point real, I have learning difference. Jen and I were college roommates, and we were both English majors, but I majored in English because it was my weakest point, not because it was my strongest.
Oh.
Because taking the SAT, I realized I couldn't read at the level that other people were reading at, and I couldn't comprehend. Certainly, I still to this day, if I tried to help a student or tried to help my own kids with the SAT, I can't get those questions right. There's just not, there's no way I'm going to be able to answer questions on that test. It's too language based, as you said, it's too much reading and comprehension. But the ACT, when I sat down I distinctly remember being in an SAT, ACT prep class in high school. They ran it as part of my high school. I felt completely disempowered with the SAT.
Mm.
Then I sat and did a sample of the ACT and realized how much I knew. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can do this. I could just do it when the questions are asked in a different way and when it is spread out amongst the four topics versus just the two. So that was a very empowering experience for me once I sat down and was able to assess and see the results of what I have already learned with the ACT.
And that's
Yeah.
exactly what we want, right? We want students to feel empowered by this process.
Mhm.
I kind of liken it to the matrix, right? There is a whole system you can't see, right? My job as a test prep provider is to help you see the matrix. I'm supposed to give you the blue pill, right? And so my favorite part, my favorite part of teaching was always watching the light bulb moment. The second the
Uh-huh,
kids saw
for
like
sure.
what was happening and could understand the mechanism behind the questions. And I think this is also where there's a lot of like testing isn't fair, testing is this, that, and the other. Listen, tests don't predict your future. They just don't. That's not what they're there for. What they're there is to show what you have done in the past and what you've accumulated knowledge wise in the past. And so, if we can frame it a little different for our students and say, if your knowledge isn't showing up on the page with the bubbles you're filling in a way that accurately represents the knowledge you possess, then we need to go to the mechanics of the test and understand why that's not showing up. And so, working with somebody who can help your kids see that is vitally important.
Mhm. Yeah, and I would almost say that admissions sometimes doesn't use the test correctly, in that they're using it to predict the future,
Yeah.
and not often doing their own research to determine, does a test score really tell us anything about the student's ability to succeed at our institution? So
Well,
it's
it's funny because there's data that says it doesn't. And I
yes.
think that that's right. And I honestly think the test makers are the ones that they're shooting themselves in the foot, right? They try and make these tests everything to everyone. And it's like, no, you do one thing, you do it fairly well, right? It's a nationally averaged, internationally averaged test. Like we're benchmarking. That's what this is
Mhm.
for, to verify in the day and age of ridiculous grade inflation that students actually have their knowledge. Are there students with learning differences who need additional support or accommodations to make sure that they can show up in their best way? Yes. But at the end of the day, it does one thing. It is one piece of your admissions package. It's not the whole shoot and match. So make sure you kind of keep it in its box, treat
Mhm.
it seriously, take it seriously, show up prepared, hydrated, fed, with everything you possibly can to put onto that test and all the energy you have behind it, and then let it go, right? Make like Indiana and let it go.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Really good advice. I like the go in hydrated piece too. I think
Oh,
that's
so many kids are like running a marathon on no hydration. What are you doing? It's mentally, you cannot function. You should see me. I used to take it even as an adult. I'd be like a chipmunk. I would have like apples and walnuts and a piece of cheese and some chocolate. Like every break, I was stuffing my face and chugging because you need that. Your body needs that. You absolutely have to support the mechanism. And I think that's something we forget, right? We treat our brain like it's sitting in a glass container. It's connected to the rest of you, right? And also, if you're having mental blocks around college in general, like if you're really feeling uncertain or unsure, that's going to show up in the test room. It's going to come into play. You're not going to do your best work. So, really making sure that you are bringing your best self into the test room with a spirit of, I'm going to do the best I can. And I've prepared and I've done everything I possibly can. And now I'm going to sit down, do the thing, and then I'm going to go get an ice cream because I
Mhm.
deserve it. Like,
Right.
give yourself that little carrot at the end
Right.
and let it go.
I sat still for 4 hours.
Right?
I deserve something.
Exactly. Exactly.
So Gina, I know you had a couple questions that you wanted to ask.
Yeah, I did, and I still think my head is spinning as far as where to start, because I want to start with that anxiety piece, and kind of talk about and unpack how can a parent help a student with the anxiety piece, as far as there is so much mm, on this test, there's so much pressure on the test. Students compare scores, the second they come out.
Yeah.
Admissions folks are looking at the scores. And we'll talk in a moment how it's tied to financial aid, how scholarships are tied to the scores. So if you're a student with a learning difference, what's that like? So how can parents best help their student with the pressure piece in the preparation process? Not all students are going to be motivated, right? They're going to be some unmotivated, and then they're going to be some hyper motivated people. So how can a parent help their child get ready for all this?
Well, we could talk about this for the rest of our time. And it really does depend on the kid, right? And so I would say the first piece is anyone who's an early bird showing up listening right now before you're headed to the process, right? Before you're even in the thick of it. If you are early, do an assessment right now. Sit with your kid and say, "Hey, academically, how are you doing? How do you feel day to day at school? Where do you know you don't know?" And shore that up, right?
Mhm.
Get the support you need right now, because at the end of the day, this is about that whole base of knowledge and what you're bringing to the test. If there are holes, students will do everything they can to not look at it, but the reality is it's probably going to show up on the test. So those core academics have to be solid. Now, for those of you who are like, uh-oh, where I worked once with a senior. She was a rising senior. She'd taken the test like 8 times
Oof.
and she did not understand fractions, right? That just breaks my heart because it's like, how many classrooms did she sit in? How many worksheets did she do? And she skirted that. And it felt good at the time to like get away with it or go around it or figure out her way around it. She made it. And then here it comes in her senior year as she's really looking to get into a school she loves. Now she's fallen in love with the college and she doesn't have the scores. And a lot of that hinged on some of that base knowledge. So that would be number one. Now, if
Mhm.
you are that senior, do not try to take the test avoiding what you don't know. Turn around and face it. You have to address it, because if you don't, your mental gremlins are going to come out in the middle of a test day. And even if it's not actually a question that has to do with that base of knowledge you feel uncomfortable with, that is sitting on your shoulder and watching your every move, and it impacts your performance, your ability to think clearly on test day. So rip the band-aid off. Really sit and deal with the situation as it is and be honest. All right. So, parents, if you have a way to speak into this for your kids, if you go, "I've noticed, you seem really uncomfortable when fractions are a part of the mix, even though you're in calculus now. which some kids can do, right? They like
Yeah,
can
yeah.
make that leap and you go, wait a minute, you didn't, how did you get here? You know? And so for those students, I think it's really incredibly important that we sit down and have that conversation. So for that's really for the students who are maybe struggling. For the students on the other end who are really advanced, you have to remind them they haven't done some of the more, air quotes here, basic math, some of the more foundational concepts in a very long time. So I get students who are in calculus who turn around and go, what are
Geometry.
ratios?
Yeah.
Yeah, they go, I should know how to do this. And then there's this whole other negative mindset playing in of I should know and I
Right.
don't know. And I'm the smart kid and I can't ask for help and support because I'm just supposed to figure it out. So you can have like both sides of the scale working depending on your kid. And then there's my lovely in the middle of the pack folks who just feel lost. It just all feels like a haze. And so, really, for every one of them, but from kind of different angles, specificity is the key. Don't say you're bad at geometry, say you're bad with triangles specifically, and then address that. Now, on the verbal side, students in this country don't learn grammar very well. But fortunately, there's only about 6 concepts you really have to nail to do well on the writing or the English portion, depending on SAT or ACT. So really get in there, get underneath those, having someone who can guide you through it, very helpful. So core concepts, really important, but also helping your kid see why, right? What are we doing this for? And don't say college. That's not really the why. We treat college like a finish line in our country, and that is a huge problem. We have a whole, I was one of them. Like, that was go to college, everything will be handled then. No, that's not true. Not true. College is a starting line. And so, if we don't put enough gas in the tank now to get kids not just to college, but beyond, like, what do you want from life? That's really the question. And so, if we can get our students to sort of think about it that way, what life do you want? How do you want to help the world? We all have special gifts that we bring. How are you going to serve other people? How are you going to change the fabric of this world? That is the question. And when we see students who are unmotivated or avoidant or hyper motivated, even, often it's because we don't want to sit with that question, right? We think like, I just gotta have this, like, I'm just gonna keep striving. I'm just gonna keep doing the thing. And then when there's nothing else to do other than, you know, say, I got in, then it kind of feels deflating. So I would focus on what's beyond. Get your kid, if they don't have no idea, start asking questions about the things they naturally love and are connected to, even video games. All right? Like, let's stop saying that what our kids love naturally is bad or anything like that. There is something in
Or doesn't
that,
teach something.
but it does.
I know.
Gosh,
I
it
know.
teaches so much, right?
Yeah.
And so this is like the things that students are naturally drawn to. Ask why, because the reason your kid loves video games is different than the reason his friend loves video games. Having those conversations, and all of them are trapped in the car carpooling somewhere with you. Why do you like playing that game? What is it for you? Start those conversations, lob it in and let them talk and figure out who this amazing person is and then how we're going to help bring their magic to the world. And then when they're taking the test, you say, remember how you want to do X, Y, and Z in the world? This is one stepping stone. It is not the stepping stone that's going to open up every door for you. And if you get your 1500 plus or your 34 plus, then life is set, because that was a message I received.
Right.
But
Yes.
how does this facilitate the next step? And one way it does is by relieving the tuition burden. And so having those conversations about financial aid in conversation with the test is useful for students. It gives them a specific goal. If I want X amount in scholarship and at this Y college, I need Z score on this test. to make that happen. And you can get that dialed in. So it's incredibly important that we not shelter our kids. I think we think we're protecting them, we're keeping them safe, then they're not going to think about it. You have an adult in your house already. You're thinking about sending them off to college. They're already an adult. So let's treat them like adults. Let's give them all the information. Let's have open conversations, because if you don't, they know something's off. They know there's more. And that question will resonate in their head. It'll bang around in there, and it will distract them from the task at hand.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to say amen. And to the whole, like, this is just a step, and that college is just the beginning. It is not the end point, because
Yes.
so many students are taught that and have that
I
point
know.
of view that's like, I've made it now. I got into college. It's like, no, like, there's so much more you have to do. And
Yeah.
knowing why you're doing it is so important. So
Yes.
thank you, Lauren. I love that piece. So
And,
preach on.
I would like to just add to this, and I hate being like from a negative lens, but just to pause for 1 minute and say, when you hang it over a child's head or student's head or young adult's head, if you don't do well on this test, you're never going to get into college. You're never going to be able to afford college. You can't reach your goals. That also stays in someone's head.
Yes.
So the positive language, paying very close attention to when you're mad at your child, which is going to happen. Don't throw, you'll never, you're not studying, therefore you're never going to be able to do this. Come at it from a much more collaborative mindset, more positive words, and find that why, and just keep reinforcing that why. This is hard. It's hard to sit down on a Sunday afternoon and study for the SAT, but remember that exciting career that you want to set yourself up for. This is just part of it, and you're going to learn from large project management by breaking it down now on this, but make it into positive life lessons and try and avoid that fear mongering way of motivating.
Mm-hmm.
I also feel like and maybe it's because I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, I have a lot of like parenting for the younger set stuff banging around in my head, but I always thought about it sitting across the kitchen table from families. Like, you step into a home, you know what the culture of the family is real quick. And watching parents and their kids interact, and how much control parents thought they had, and then looking back at the kid and going, oh, they're not going to do it. Or, wow, like, this parent's trying to pull this hyper motivated student back a little bit from the precipice because they can see that they're spinning out. I feel like it's always a collaboration. And at the end of the day, this is the student's journey. It is their life. And if they're not doing something you think they should do, or things that are in alignment with what they've stated they want, it can be very hard to do, because often we're triggered in that moment. But to step back and go, I notice that you say you want this, and this is the next step, but you're not feeling motivated to do that. Why is that? I wonder what's going on with you. And just leaving the open-ended question kind of hanging out there, even not to force a conversation, but then like wander away and kind of let it be and see. I had someone on the show that mentioned the car is a really good place to have these hard conversations, because you're not sitting there like staring them down, right? Everybody's looking in a different direction, but you can you're together, you're captive audience. So you can revisit it and go, we were talking about that the other day. Have you had any thoughts about it? And see if it opens up some channels of conversation. Because at the end of the day, there's a block there, right? Of some sort. And fear mongering ain't gonna get you what you think is gonna get you.
No.
It's just not with a teenager. Like, it's just not.
No.
So if they offer to start walking, or if they ask for a bike for their birthday, chances are they're avoiding your car talks.
No, we're gonna get in the car ride. I'm gonna drive you.
Walk today. It's a great day.
You don't need
That's funny.
exercise. Sit down.
Right. Get in the car. No, I think that's really good advice. And I think the
It
idea of
is.
asking open-ended questions and then just kind of walking away and letting the student mull over it, especially if the student tends to lean towards introversion and really needs to think things through
Yeah.
before they come out with the answer. I just think that's great advice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, from my experience, there are test optional schools that are truly test optional. Like if you
Yes.
send it in, great. If you don't send it in, great. Both for financial aid and scholarships and for admissions, they will not look at your SAT. And some will not even require SATs.
Yes.
But there's some test optional schools that are kind of sort of test optional, right? So it's like, well, you can send it in if you want, but if you don't send it in, you might not get the kind of financial aid package that you want. So how do parents sort of, suss that out to figure out what kind of test optional institution is this?
So I I wish there was a standardized admission process because I feel like a lot of families are getting caught with the I wish we'd knowns on the other
Yeah.
side when it's too late. If they're here and listening, that's amazing because they're getting great information from a trusted source and it's going to help them avoid those pitfalls. But the I don't knows are, oh, especially when they're around thousands of dollars in scholarships, real problematic. So, the thing that I would say is look at the price tag on every college. And if it were a price tag on a house, would you get a pre approved financing before you go and look at it? If it is, you need to figure out financing hand in hand with the admissions process. If you look at it and go, oh, we can float that, fine, great, right? Do whatever you need to do. But the problem is that so many families are thinking about this after the fact, and it's not, and it kind of makes sense in the sense that like we need to decide what we want to buy before we pay for it, kind of, but it's more like a house than just something you go pick up at the store.
Mm.
So, what I would encourage families to do is look at the price tag. Start there. Go to all the colleges you're considering and look at the cost right now. Do not wait, do not pass go, do not collect $200. And then as you do, look at their it's hard because we call it financial aid, scholarships, merit aid, need-based aid. It's like all lumped together, grants, right? It's like all lumped together in this weird amalgam of concepts that then you go, but which is what and how do I get each? So think about institutional aid first, which is merit aid and financial aid. Sometimes merit aid is called scholarships. I call them in-school scholarships sometimes to differentiate them from private scholarships that come from outside that can follow you anywhere.
Mhm.
Institutional scholarships, you only get them if you go to that school. The merit aid piece, the in-school scholarship piece, is where you often will find rubrics that say if you have this GPA and this ACT or SAT score, you will get this much money from us, and then multiply that number by 4 because in theory you are going to get it all 4 years provided you hit the baseline of what the
Maintenance.
yeah, the maintenance you need to maintain that over 4 years. So a minimum GPA, that sort of thing. Go through with every school and look at their financial aid / scholarship page and find out that information and look at the requirements for those awards. Don't even worry about whether the school is test optional or not. Look at the requirements for the scholarships, and then you can go to the admissions page and see if they state a policy of test optional. Because the reality is, if you want the aid, which I think we all should say yes to free money more often, if you want the aid, then if the aid says you need the score, then it is no longer optional for you. And what's happening is a lot of families are not looking at that piece. Schools are saying they're test optional to increase their yields, and their applications, and it's throwing all the numbers out of whack on US News and World Report. For a lot of these schools, it's a numbers play. They want to look more selective. So
Mhm.
they're trying to attract more applications, and then they aren't raising the number of students who can come to that school, so their percentages of accepted students are dropping, and that makes them look very selective, which is a metric that used to be used for the rankings. I don't think it is anymore.
I think it
However,
weighs less than it used to.
But
And
they
it's
still
still
brag
used.
about
still
it.
find
They
it.
find a way to
Yeah,
boast that. And it's coming at
absolutely.
students' expense, and it's a business. And I say
Yes,
all the time, college is a business. A college is a business, and they're looking for clients, they're looking for people to sell their product to, and they have to. That's the way it is. We live
absolutely.
in a country where your statistics, your benefit, you have to build your own brand. All of that happens with a college as much as it does with the neighborhood deli. It's the same.
It's true. They don't make those pretty brochures just out of the goodness of their heart.
Mhm.
That's the truth.
And so, what I often would encourage students to do is I would say, look at the schools you're interested in, find your scholarship opportunities, see what numbers you need. The other beautiful thing that this does is it gives you a stopping point. You know, when you get your 29 or your 1350 instead of a 1340, that just got you $1,000 more a year. That's a $4,000 point increase, right? Over 4 years. And so it's incredibly important to know that, because that sense of accomplishment is now elevated. The specificity of the goal is also locked in. And that sort of sets this, like, okay, I can put the number 2 pencil down moment. You get to celebrate. Now, the other trick is to get the highest score you can, but also know, sort of like, if there's no difference between a 29 and a 30 for you at the schools you're looking at, don't bother testing again.
Right.
Also, aim high and then look down. Look at the schools whose averages are slightly lower than yours. Because to your point, Gina, when you are looking at these schools, we all are kind of going up. We're going, I'm going to try and get into Harvard or Stanford, and I'm going to aim high. Yeah, but the colleges that will give you money to attend are slightly below your rung on the ladder. And
Exactly.
because they're trying to elevate their numbers, they're trying to improve their averages. And the further down the ladder you go, the more money, in theory, you will be awarded to go to that institution. Now, this has to work in concert with that school being the right fit for you in every other respect. I'm not saying look
Right.
down and go to any university just to go, but look down and find programs that you're genuinely interested in. Look down and find, we have so many amazing institutions. Look down and find the right student body for you. Go and visit the college, demonstrate your interest, because otherwise you might be rejected because they go, oh, you're way too high. Like you would never actually come to our
Yes.
Come
school.
here. Right.
You
Right.
get waitlisted, you get deferred, you get, denied. So really make sure that it's the right fit. Connect with professors, connect with the admissions office, students, not parents. Show your interest and make sure that they know that you are genuinely interested about their institution. And I bet you'll
Jen,
find
I
more
would
A.
like, can you take notes on two things for follow-up conversations? One is the lure of an honors college at a lesser school. That's one thing that is now starting to come out. I noticed a lot of the students that I'm working with now are high achieving students being lured to lesser schools so they could be fully paid for and in the honors college, but they don't want to go to that school, and they're surrounded by classmates that maybe don't share their drive and potential and skill set. So that's one thing I would very much like to talk in more detail about. And then the other is, how do you actually compare offers, financial aid offers, when it comes to colleges, because you're not often comparing apples to apples. So it's hard to know what is a free ride at one school versus a partial scholarship at another, where's the worth of that degree and where's the worth of your investment?
Yes, I marked that down for
Thank you,
another
because
conversation.
I'll forget, and if I start taking notes, then I won't listen. I can't.
Right. So, all right. So, so much good information there, Warren, about, yeah, just thinking through all those things and, picking the college because it's the right college for you, and not just like, not only where can I get the most aid.
Yes. Oh, it has to be all of it.
Yeah.
And can I stop and just say, with the lower student, or a student like myself with a learning difference, and Jen knows this story, and we're actually going to give a presentation on this at a conference in April, which is a student with a learning difference who can't achieve that top score. Their grades are terrific, their performance, their letters of recommendation, their essays, all that, but they can't hit this standardized test score, even though it may be optional. A college, in our case, it's my experience, and I've spent a career helping students with learning differences through this. A lot of times the school will say, just take the test. It doesn't matter what your score is, but we want to know you had the courage and the fortitude to go in there and do your best. Give us the opportunity to waive your score. Like if an SAT or an ACT score is mandatory from a school, if schools start to go back to that or highly recommended, and you're trying to hide your score, it goes to what you were saying before. Don't hide. You can't run and hide from it. It is what it is. So now approach that school and give them an opportunity to waive the score on their end, even though you're submitting it and you're in a position where you have to do that to hit the requirements.
I feel like you're hitting on something that I witnessed a lot, and that is a lack of trust that college admissions officers are are wanting to say yes, right? And trusting them to handle your information kindly. I think information that's not presented, they can't consider, and they don't know whether you took it and just didn't exceed your expectations or meet your expectations, even, or if you just decided not to do it. And if you prepared and it didn't quite go to plan, but you still did what you needed to do to get that score, you worked hard, you should be proud of the journey. And college admissions officers have access to the fact that you have a learning difference. It's in your file. So they can put the pieces together. If they go, wow, this student works really hard, they clearly are exceptional in the classroom, they struggle a little bit with testing. Thank you for that information, right? Like that, it's just information. They want to build the best freshman class that they possibly can, a cohesive class of students who share values and who have passions, and you might fit the bill or you might not for a myriad other reasons.
Right.
But if you don't give them the information, they can't make that call. And I think, to my mind, I would rather be rejected for the information I gave than wonder if I had given information, if I would have gotten in. And I think you have to think about that as you're deciding what to do.
Yeah, and from someone who's read a lot of applications on the admissions side, and scholarship applications, it's just the best is not to make us guess.
Yeah.
So if you can share that information and it's in there, then we know what's happening. We can see everything that's going on. If you don't share that, then we're just left to guess. And I think that you said that exactly right. Admissions people do treat your information kindly and thoughtfully when they read your application. So don't hesitate to ask these questions, or to have your student reach out and ask the question, even better. And find out what you can about these scholarships, these merit aid, all of the institutional aid that you have available, and what they're really looking for. And if you have a learning difference, start to talk about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I know we could probably go on for like half a day talking about this, and sort of far ranging into other kind of admissions things. Gina, are there any other questions that you want to ask?
No, I feel like we've covered the big topics that we wanted to talk about, and it's a lot for a parent to digest. I would just say trust that there are resources out there to learn more about any of these concepts that we're talking about, and that we're more than happy to follow up with an additional podcast and additional recording. If you're unsure, you want more information, then we can always work together again and reach out to Lauren, get her back on the call, and ask to go a little deeper on the things that you have questions about.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. Lauren,
Yes.
if people are looking for you, if they want to find out more about you, where could they find you?
So I now live at laurengaggioli.com on the interwebs.
Very good.
So I have my course about naming your purpose, coming up with that mission statement that gives you direction and intention in your life. That is coming out on May 1st. So bigwhylife.com is where that will be. And if you do want help with test prep, as I said, I sold the company, but I love the gal who is supporting it now. She was a longtime friend. She has basically kept all the programs intact. She's just the one facilitating it. So it's still me teaching, but I'm no longer affiliated with the company, which is kind of interesting. But that's available at higherscorestestprep.com.
Okay.
So if you need test prep help, those are the courses I created, teaching students how to kind of get underneath the tests. And there's two versions. There's the quick prep, which is only 4 hours. And there's a version for the ACT and one for the SAT. And then there's complete package, which is more full academic support as well. But if you just want to get underneath the and see behind the matrix, then quick prep is your way in. 4 hours and you're done. So for those students who struggle, it's a good option. A nice middle path for them.
Nice. And you also have two podcasts, but one isn't currently active. Is that right?
So yes, well, there are three.
Oh my goodness.
I'm a crazy
Okay.
person. So I also have a parenting podcast called Magical Mindset Moments, where we take my friend Jen and I, not this Jen, another Jen.
Another Jen.
There are a lot of Jens in my life. But we take Disney stories and examine the mindset lessons we can learn from within them. And then Higher Scores Test Prep had the College Checklist podcast, which will be coming back in February. Not in February, in March. Not hosted by me anymore. So Kat will be the one handling that. And then I have a new show for entrepreneurs that's coming out over the summer, and that's called The Unsexy Side for anyone listening. Summer 2023 and beyond.
All right, awesome. So you're pretty much bored and sitting at home with nothing to do.
Yeah, I'm also homeschooling. It's great. It's all fine.
Well, my goodness. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing your knowledge and your expertise with our families who are listening. And I learned a lot listening to you, and I really appreciate your guidance and your thoughts on both the SAT and the ACT.
It was my pleasure. It was so lovely to speak with you both this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I learned a lot. I actually, against better judgment, did take notes.
You seemed very involved the whole time, though. You were mentally present, I could tell.
Yes. So please, if you have any questions, you can always find us at keys2college.org, or you can email us directly at K2C@keys2college.org. And we are delighted to talk with you and answer any questions that you have. So until next week, thank you for joining us, and you'll be hearing us again soon. Bye.